Good evening and welcome. This is the August 28th, 2024 public hearing of the Land Use Commission. The City Code directs this body to hear applications for map and text amendments, special uses including planned developments, zoning relief, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator, as well as to make recommendations regarding the city's long-term planning goals and objectives. Depending on the type of matter, this commission will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo. Commissioner Halleck. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Linwall.
Here.
Commissioner Mabadi. Commissioner Mangum.
Here.
Commissioner Budenchev. Commissioner Pectel.
Here.
Chair Rogers.
Here. So with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Also present from city staff tonight are Neighborhood and Land Use Planner Megan Jones, Assistant City Attorney Brian George, and Zoning Administrator Melissa Klotz. This is a formal hearing, and there are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time so that all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the commission regarding any matter on tonight's agenda will have the opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After that, persons wishing to make a statement regarding the matter will have a chance to do so. Any person with a legal interest in property located within the defined notification requirements of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the commission will close the record and begin deliberations to consider the standards. The commission will make formal findings of fact based on the testimony and evidence presented, guided by the standards, the commissioner's knowledge of the community, and the recommendations of staff. All testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance and the corresponding staff memorandum. When testifying, please state your name and address for the record and sign in on the provided public comment sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. Please make sure that you are at a microphone when asking questions or making statements so that you can be properly recorded. All proceedings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's agenda will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. We do have 2 items on the agenda. One is a continuation from our last meeting, which is just an open vote. The second one is an appeal for 1525 Judson, 24 ZMJV 0029. Is that appellant present? Thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask anybody who may be speaking to us on the Judson matter to be sworn by raising your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Thank you. With that, we will move on to the first item which we have, which is a continuation of 1630 Ashland Avenue, 24 ZMJV 0025. We currently have a split of 3-3 on the vote. Since we are the determining body, we are required by our rules to have 5 concurring votes for any decision to be rendered. At this point, I have 2 commissioners here. Ms. Mangum was literally just appointed Monday. She has not had time to review this particular case, so I'm not going to ask her to vote at this particular meeting. But I will ask Commissioner Johnson, who was not present at the last meeting, if he would like to, if he has taken the time to review the testimony, either through minutes or evidence.
Yes, I watched the video recording of the last meeting and read through the packet.
All right. And are you prepared to cast a vote at this point?
Yeah, I am.
And how do you vote?
I vote no.
You vote no, which takes the vote to a 3-4 vote, which unfortunately means that it will have to be continued again, giving Ms. Mangum a chance to actually review the testimony and for Mr. Mabadi also to review and provide a vote at the next meeting. So unfortunately, we still do not have a resolution on this particular matter. But that will be at our next meeting, which is, staff can help me, September 11th at 7 p.m. So that's where we stand on that case right now. I'm sorry.
Chair,
Yes.
Is there any chance for any discussion? I just wanted to say one thing about this, which I forgot to say at our last meeting regarding this. Is that?
I mean, we have an open vote going. So really, we shouldn't be providing anything additional. Is it relating to process? Is it relating to?
Brian George, Assistant City Attorney, really, if the case is up for an open vote, there should not be additional discussion on it.
Okay, all right.
So with that, we will move on to the second case, which is new business regarding 1525 Judson Avenue. And Ms. Klotz, I believe this is you. If you would please read it into the record for us.
Donna and Mitchell Harrison, property owners of 1519 Judson Avenue, appeal the yard determinations of zoning analysis 24 ZONA 0062 for a request to demolish a detached garage and construct a two-story detached garage and ADU at 1525 Judson Avenue in the R1 Single Family Residential District. The appellant appeals the zoning administrator's interpretation that Davis Street is the front yard and Judson Avenue is the street side yard of 1525 Judson Avenue, which thereby allows for zoning compliance for a detached garage and ADU. Yard determinations are made in conformance with Zoning Code Section 6419A4. The Land Use Commission is the determining body for this case in accordance with Section 6311 of the Evanston Zoning Code.
Thank you. At this point, I think you're being represented by counsel, Mr. Smith. If you'd like to come up and present your appeal to us, and then we will ask questions throughout, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Jones, and Ms. Klotz, Mr. Council, and members of the commission. My name is Jeff Smith. I represent the owners and residents of 1519 Judson, the adjacent property directly to the south of the subject property at 1525 Judson, and as you know, we are appealing the zoning determination that the ADU / coach house garage that's proposed to be built in the yard of 1525 Judson is in the rear yard. Our position is that that determination is incorrect and that it is in the side yard. I know there's been some press locally, people making more out of this case than it is, saying it's a test case about ADUs. And just preliminarily, before we put on our case, I want to stress that, and I think the chairman would agree, that this is that goes well beyond what's at issue in this case. ADUs will be built in Evanston regardless of what happens in this case. This is not about whether ADUs are good or ADUs are bad. My client's appeal would be substantially the same, even if it were a workshop, a garage, any other type of accessory structure. A dwelling is a little more intense than many uses, but that's not what's at issue here. The question is whether it's being proposed to be built in the correct yard, which is a very narrow question of law. And my hope and plea to this commission is that all possible and potential politics, ideology, philosophy be put aside in favor of affording my clients and the proponents of the structure a fair hearing on this very narrow question of law. This is not just a matter of legislators having an opinion. The next step after this for anybody would be to appeal it to the circuit court, so we're making an administrative record, and so we're all going to try and do the best job we can to make that record as rational and legal as possible. That said, I will save any other remarks for a closing, and I'll put on our case through a couple witnesses. If I'll first call to the stand Donna Harrison. We only have one mic, so we'll share it.
There that you can, one of you can use and the other can speak into the microphone.
Sure. My name is Donna Harrison. I live at 1519 Judson Avenue. in
Thank you, Ms.
Evanston.
Harrison.
Donna, how long have you lived in the neighborhood?
Over 24 years.
And all of that has been at 1519 Judson?
That's correct.
And during those 24 years, have you had time to become familiar with the neighborhood as a whole?
Yes, my husband and I have been avid bike riders and walkers. We've done everything from going all the way west into Skokie and all the way east into the lakefront and back and forth from, all the way from Wilmette all the way down to Chicago, and have walked the neighborhoods consistently and know it pretty well. Do we know everything? No, but a lot of it.
And when you moved into the house, it was already part of the Preservation District, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and was that one of the reasons that you bought this house?
I can't say that because my husband bought
Correct.
the house and I moved in after it. But my husband was avid with the Preservation League. It wasn't the Preservation Commission. And I was familiar with that area, even to the point where when other people moved in, as Tom Breen, who lives next to us in 1515, moved in, the first thing I said to him was, "What are you going to do construction-wise?" And he said, "I can't. It's a preservation district. We're not allowed to do anything to the house." I said, "Oh, that's nice."
And you've had opportunity to observe numerous other projects being done in the neighborhood.
Correct. The people across the street from, Mike Myers, who was here, had a terrible time just getting a window replaced because the Preservation Commission wouldn't allow him for 6 months to decide the termination of what was structurally allowed in the Preservation District. But the people that live kitty corner to us have a beautiful farmhouse that they rehabbed, and they did put on an ADU, but it was in the alley behind the house on top of a 4-car garage, not right next to a primary residence, between two primary residences.
When I refer to, quote, the neighborhood is more than the one block that you live on, correct?
Correct. I mean, Judson's a big block. I mean, it starts almost at the university and then goes all the way down to South Boulevard. So it's a very large street. Our block happens to be unique because we only have 6 forward-facing homes on the block. And then, of course, across the street is the Mather, which gives us a beautiful park. But it's very unique because it's a very small, short block, the 1500 block.
But in general, is there a pattern to how the layout of the neighborhood and the Preservation District are?
Well, I mean, all the houses seem to face forward. They're very old structures. They've been there for a long time. Nobody's done any major construction to them. They all conform to that north east-facing street. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the way Evanston is. It's the way the old homes are. It's the way they look on the yard, and nobody has done anything to really change that look on the entire street.
And in general, the north-south streets, Hinman, Forest, Sheridan Road?
They all are the same. They all seem to face the same direction.
The blocks on those are longer than the east-west streets, correct?
They are.
So to your knowledge, in your years of living there, biking around, walking, and having the chance to observe construction, et cetera, are you aware of any street-facing accessory dwellings whose front facades are as close to the street as that of the principal dwelling?
No, absolutely not. And also remember, the ADU ordinance came in during COVID. But prior to that, all of the structures that are coach houses or what would have been accessory dwelling units are in the back of the homes, and a lot of these homes have alleys. We don't have an alley. The 1500 block of Judson doesn't have an alley. So if you saw them, you might see something that might be on top of a garage on an alley that might be down the street on Judson, because there are alleys, but not on our block.
So that's unusual.
Well, I think it would be unusual. I think it's wonderful. I think it's just grand that that's the way it is. That's where they're meant to be. And I like the fact that the houses face front. The yards are beautiful. There's light and there's air in between them. And I don't see that there's any need to put a second residence on such a small lot.
Okay. Did you know your neighbor Nancy Brueggemann,
Very well.
and where did she live?
She lived at 1525 Judson
Okay, and did you ever have occasion to be in her house at 1525 Judson?
many times.
And-
Her daughter was disabled towards the end of her life there, and both of us were nurses, and I went in to help her out many times. She was a very well-loved and liked, beautiful. We had parties in there, Christmas parties. We made Christmas cookies, things like that.
Do you know what door she and her daughter used as the front door?
Well, they always used the front door, which was on 1525. That was where they went in and out. And even towards the end of her living there, they had to put a ramp on because Megan needed to have a wheelchair. So they put it on the front door so it could go into the front entryway so that then it could move around to the rest of the home.
And by the front door, the front entryway?
1525. I never saw her come out of any of the others. Would she go out from her the door that was off of their living room? Rarely did I ever see her. We helped her bring in groceries. It's always on 1525. That's the spot that she went into.
By 1525,
Judson.
you're referring to the west side of the house that
Correct.
faces Judson?
Correct.
And there was a door on the north end of the house that faces Davis Street?
I don't remember when that door would have gone in. If that door was, it was off a galley kitchen. Nancy had two very large Newfoundlands. She had put the porch around there with the landscaping and the fence early in the 2000s, and it was to let her very large dogs off of the galley kitchen to be able to go outside to sit in the sunshine or to make potty. I mean, that's where they did, but that was not the door they used to come and go. That was the Davis Street side.
Mr. Chairman, we've submitted as one of our exhibits, and it's already part of the appeal record, but I ask that it be allowed into evidence despite the fact that Ms. Brueggemann is not here. We'd like to avoid having to call her and take her away from the care of her daughter for this, but we have submitted a sworn affidavit from her, and I will ask that that be considered as part of the administrative record within the latitude allowed for an administrative proceeding.
And it is.
Donna, in what ways would you be harmed by the construction that's proposed to be erected, the structure that's proposed to be put up in the, well, let me back up a second. Have you had a chance to review the plans for the coach house slash garage slash ADU proposed to be built at 1525 Judson?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously you believe that you would be harmed if that were built. And can you detail some of the ways in which you would be harmed?
I think that it's two-pronged. One of it is emotional, and the other is financial and artistical, or whatever you want to call it. First of all, emotionally, it's going to be a large structure. The house itself is only a little over 1,200 square feet, and the ADU is coming in just under 1,000 square feet. So it's almost like you're putting a second home in that lot. The other thing is that in my master bedroom and my master bath, I have one window in my master bath. And if you raised that, you pushed it back and made it even larger and raised it, when I looked out my master bathroom, instead of looking at trees and light and a squirrel that loves a tree, I'll see a brick building with maybe a window. That's the emotional part of it. And then once they take down the structure and they fill in a new foundation, they'll cut all of the landscaping that goes along that foundation, and I will lose even those trees. That's the emotional part of it, and I know you guys aren't dealing with that. The financial part of it is that you are putting a large structure on a forward-facing home, which we believe the front is 1525. I've always known that 1525 Judson is the front of the house. Even the two residents prior to that I mean, the one woman put a mermaid statue on the front of her house. I mean, believed that that was the front of their house. That it would take away the curb appeal of my home. And people, if I try in the future to sell my house and there's this structure that doesn't fit into the lot, what is it going to take away from my property value? And what will that cause? And then if I can interject the final thing, which is emotional too, and you have to understand this is very emotional for my husband and I know that's not what you all deal with, is that where does Evanston stop? Like, what happened to ADUs being on an alley in the back of a home? Where did all of a sudden a home that's, or a second-story building that's going to an apartment on the top, where does that allowed in between two primary residents? I don't understand it. That's, again, the emotional part of this.
Well, let me follow up with that. I understand that you're calling it emotional, but even buying a house is an emotional decision, correct?
Right. I mean,
When you bought 1519 Judson, did you look at the views that you had from the house? From within the house?
I knew that when I moved into the home and Mitchell asked me to be his wife, that there was something special about it. There's something special about the property, about the home and the light and the views. There's a tree, I swear, in our master bathroom that squirrels have come to make it their summer home. And they sit up there and they lay up there and they groom and everything else like that. Brain's house is very close to us, but there's light in between it all. It's there for the asking. And I have pictures. It's something, and it's something. And when my husband bought the house and came to see it in 1983, they looked at Nancy's house. And they said to the realtor, if the house next door comes on the market, I want to buy that house. I mean, we've done beautiful things to it. Everybody in the neighborhood takes care of their homes. And, I mean, you know, you live in the neighborhood, you buy into the neighborhood, you pay your taxes in the neighborhood, you take care of your property in the neighborhood, and you see what it looks like. Absolutely.
We've submitted, on your behalf, a number of photographs that are in 4 photographs in Exhibit 10 of our appeal. And I'm sorry, the packet that was put together doesn't have individual page numbers. It's near the very end of our exhibits that start at about page 38 of the packet, and I haven't had a chance to number them all. I would guess that it's about roughly page 135 if you're looking for it. I'm going to show you these 4 photographs.
I have big
that are
ones.
Exhibit 10.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
very briefly,
Right.
if you could identify what each of these shows.
Well, the one with the car in the front of it is when Nancy owned the property, and you can tell that it's wintertime because there's no foliage on the garage to my house, but that is my master bedroom window, and then beyond that is the master bath window.
Let the record reflect that the witness is pointing to the top picture on the first of the 4 that are listed in Exhibit 10, and she's indicating the window to the upper right and the structure shown to the right of the garage in that picture.
And I believe for the commissioners, it's on page 102 of our packet.
Maybe back the other way.
I was going to say, I think if you
I think it
scroll
might,
back.
yeah,
Just about had it there.
there. Well, down a
Go
little,
up one more.
that.
There.
Top
The
picture
top
there.
one is the one we were speaking.
Right. So does that fairly and accurately depict the distance between the 2 properties?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
But right now, you can see over the structure from those upper
Right,
story
yeah,
windows.
that would be winter, before the tree foliage came out.
Okay.
And then the bottom photo.
What is that, what's shown in that
Okay,
picture?
and that is more current that I took, but that is more summer when the foliage becomes apparent and the tree, you could see the trees coming over the garage.
So the trees are right up next to the garage?
Yeah, they are, they're on the property line.
And the next picture shows a view where?
Okay, so the top picture is what I see out my master bathroom. And that little branch is my tree where my squirrels live. And then the bottom one is out, actually, that is in our living room that goes into their, the rear of, going into the rear of their house behind the garage. And the big tree that you see is Bob and Alice's 80-foot Douglas fir, which is right on the property line.
So the property line is approximately where the second frame,
Into the property that's Davis Street. The white fence is closer to my property line.
what I'm saying is, looking at, you've got a French window type window there, and there's two vertical frames in the middle, dividers in the middle of the picture. The rightmost of those vertical dividers is approximately, it's almost obscuring the fence line that marks the edge of 1525
And
Judson's
the
property.
other one, yes, correct,
And so just to the right of that is.
is
you can see the
Davis.
trunk of that tree that you're
That's the
referring to.
tree that we're referring to.
And so do all these pictures fairly and accurately depict what you've described in them?
Yes, I have more, but they do.
Okay. Do you want to bring up those other pictures?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we've already covered essentially these first five, right?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And then this more depicts the street that we were just speaking of, and this one, if you hold, no, there's another one, sorry. It's that. Okay, so this is Judson Avenue. This is the east side of Judson. So this is 1525 Judson. That's the garage that we're speaking of. Then directly next to that, these are the bush lines. This is my home.
Let the record reflect that, and the reason I'm doing this is
I
because
understand.
if it gets transcribed and somebody else has
Correct.
to
I
look
don't know
at
the
it.
legalese of this.
the-
Okay. This,
The witness is referring to this, the center of the three photographs at the top of the collage that's labeled at the top 1515 Judson.
that's this house. Okay, that's going southbound on Judson, and that's 1515, which is Tom Breen's house, who's back there. Okay, and then this is the Davis Street side that we say is the side of 1525. This is the side of 1525.
The witness is referring to the bottom left picture on this
And this-
poster board.
Unfortunately, this is a smaller version of it, but this is the west side of our little block. And we have a house there that faces forward. This is the house in the middle, which is 50, so this is 1512, this is 1514. This is the house that has the ADU in the back, which we never contested, that's on their four-car garage. And then this is 1518 Judson, which is directly across the street from us. Mr. Mike Myers is here with us tonight.
All right, Mr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to bring that up so I can label that as A, because we'll need to take photos.
Thank you.
So I am labeling this as Exhibit A for record, and then staff will have to take photos, scan, do whatever they need to do in order to make a record of that.
Let's call this Exhibit B for identification. And this is a poster board with 4 photographs on it, and starting
Well, if you excuse me for a moment, but the posters that you have, so when we're talking about Judson, and I told you that there are 6 forward-facing homes. So it's 1525, 1515, 1519, 1515, those are on the east side of the street. And on the west side of the street are the even numbers. But at the end of the block, the south end of Judson, there are two homes that actually have actually their side yards on Judson. And that is this house, which is on the east side of Judson. This is the side yard, but the front of their home faces Lake Street. And this is the west side of Judson, which there is a side yard and there's a fence around this house. And their front house faces Grove.
Right, if you could bring that up, please, so I can label that. And just for the record, the photos that are included in here, were these taken by you, Ms. Harrison?
Oh, I think
Or-
my husband, but yes.
Okay.
And I printed them and I put.
Approximately when were they taken?
Couple weeks ago.
All
Yeah,
right, thank
when
you.
we were getting prepared for
Yep.
this presentation.
Just trying to gauge what the conditions
Oh,
are
yeah,
at the time.
correct,
So
correct.
about a week ago. I
Very,
don't-
very current.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, before we had the storm.
All right, thank you.
Now, there is a house that's next to you on the south of you, correct?
Yes,
And that house is already relatively close, correct?
yes.
And that's the one with, can you describe what's between the two properties?
Okay, so in between it, and you'll be able to depict that, that's 1515 Judson. It's owned by Tom Breen. That house has a spite wall around it. That wall was, and I swore, so I can't tell you the time frame. But before our side of the property was divided up, there were two homes that were built in the 1800s. A gentleman built the house, and he asked his best friend to move in and build the house next to him. Of course, they didn't stay friends, so they built this huge brick spite wall that goes all the way down to your house, right? The Hammerschlags have it on Lake Street, and it goes around the property of Tom Breen's on 1515. That structure has been in existence since the 1700s, but that's what it was called. It was a
But
spite wall.
Visually, that wall, it extends all the way to the sidewalk,
It
correct?
does.
So.
It does.
So to the south of you, you're already hemmed in by one wall,
Right,
correct?
right.
But you have breathing space and room to the north right now.
Right, and when you see it in the back of my house, and you see their house in the back of my house, and you look up, you don't feel like you're hemmed in. The wall, we see over the wall, we talk over the wall. It's not like you're suffocating in it. It's not like you're seeing a brick wall.
The, do you have an estimation of do you know how old the trees are along the north side of your property?
Tom would probably be able to answer. The elm tree that's in his property is very old, but our elm, these bushes, arborvitae bushes that are on the side, were put in the around 1985 or 6, I think, when they were planted. The ones that are on the side, the other trees. There's a linden tree that's right there, and another elm that's right there. That honestly, I believe that they were saplings that just grew very tall.
Okay. And have you attempted at all to ascertain what the impact would be of?
So, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I want to keep us focused here because the tree ordinance is not in our purview. And so I want us to focus on the issues that are our issues. And if you have issues with trees, that needs to be addressed through, and council can help me here. I don't know because it's a brand-new ordinance, so I don't know fully.
For that reason, I didn't include a
Right.
lot of tree
I just
evidence
don't want
in
us
the
to
appeal.
get too far afield here on the tree issue because that's not something that we can address.
Frankly, all I want to do is introduce one letter of an arborist, and the only reason is because the form that we were asked to fill out for the appeal asked in what way would you be harmed by this? And so the potential damage to trees is one of the harms. Whether or not it would violate the ordinance is.
As long as we keep it very focused, I'm willing to allow that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that. I did my due diligence, and I asked my arborist what would happen to my trees, because one of the things that is impacted to me would be if I lose all those trees, nobody's going to, with their foundation, which is a big impact, nobody's going to plant mature trees that are 20 or 30 feet high.
Okay, we tried to transmit today through the zoning administrator copies of the arborist report.
And we did receive that.
You did receive that?
We
Okay,
received
then
that
I-
about 5 o'clock today, I think,
Fine.
in our emails.
If we can call that Exhibit 3 or stipulate that it's part of the record, then I don't have to
It is part of the
spend any more
record
time with
because it has been submitted before the hearing began.
it. Is there somebody here from the applicant? Otherwise,
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Tony's here. They're,
Are you Mr. Hurdick?
yes,
I did, just wanted.
I saw him come in.
Okay.
Okay, just a few more questions. In your time at 1519 Judson, have you had opportunity to observe or learn of what homes are listed for and sell for over time? That is to say, the value of real estate in your neighborhood.
There hasn't been anything directly on our neighborhood that's been for sale. There's not a lot of things for sale. I know that I had my home appraised, and so I know what the value of my house could possibly be. And it's just like you would say, it's who's gonna pay for that. About $1.1 million at the time, but it's just gonna imagine who's gonna come in and who's gonna.
So
Buy
do
that
you
house.
read real estate reports and speak with real estate professionals in the area?
Oh, I do.
Okay. And do you do anything else to keep abreast of what values are and factors that affect sales in the neighborhood?
Sure, and I've spoken to a number of people, especially, and I asked the specific question about having a rental property next to mine in an R1, and although I know the Salems are saying that they're not going to use that property as a rental property, nobody can say that in perpetuity, or whatever that word is, because they have elderly parents that are going to be living up there. So I don't know what that would do to my property values, and I've asked a number of people, but I had someone tell me they thought that it might decrease my property values by, I know this sounds like a crazy figure, but she said that it could be around $200,000.
Okay. Do you yourself, based on the loss of views down both Judson Avenue and out your second-story windows, the diminished natural light, the crowding of the house, and the potential damage to the trees that are a significant part of your landscaping, do you have an opinion or estimate as to the loss of value that would occur from this construction?
I mean, that's an emotional opinion. I can't, as I raised my hand, I can't honestly give you a number, but I can say that if I brought somebody up to my master bedroom and they walked into the master bath and had the only light there, and then they looked out the window and saw a brick wall with a window, could you all imagine? I mean, we could all imagine that.
That's all the questions I have for you, Donna.
Thanks.
I'll bring up Mitchell at this point.
Mitchie? Yes.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Mitchell Harrison. Hi, Melissa. I've heard about you guys, you especially.
And-
How you doing?
Good. Mitchell, how long have you lived at this address?
40 years.
And do you have other time in the neighborhood or in Evanston prior to that?
Yeah, well, my parents moved to Evanston in 1959, and I stayed there until I went to school there, went to high school there, and in 1969, I moved a really long way away, and it was to East Rogers Park. And then I moved back to Evanston a few years later. So many, many years.
Many of us have made that journey. During your extensive time in this neighborhood, have you had an opportunity to become familiar with the general layout of the streets and the
Oh,
houses
yeah,
in the
quite a
neighborhood?
bit. I mean, I I know the folks who are my neighbors, and I've been fascinated by the neighborhood all the years I've lived there, because the people who live there really keep their homes beautiful. They keep them restored, they keep them refreshed. They take care of them. They're very beautiful. And yes, it's a fascinating area. I consider myself very lucky to have bought there an 80-some-year-old house, and I'm only the second owner since it was built.
And has the preservation aspect of the neighborhood played a part in either your purchase or your keeping the house? That is,
Yes, it certainly has. I didn't know that much about preservation, although I always, I'm stepping on my toes. I've always been into preservation since I was a little kid, and seen a major movie palace being torn down on Howard Street by the L. But I didn't really put it all together until I was older. And yeah, I mean, it's fascinated me forever. Oh, and at one time, I'm sorry, at one time we had a preservation league in Evanston, in which I was honored to be the president. We didn't get a lot done. We didn't save a lot of structures that we wanted to. We did get the building that's next to Whole Foods. They were going to make it 40 stories, and through a lot of work, bringing in a lot of experts who testified, we were able to get them down to 30 stories. So yes, I've been into it forever.
would your testimony be largely the same as Donna's as to the north-south streets, like Hinman, Forest, Judson, Sheridan, being the dominant layout in the larger neighborhood,
Yeah.
both
Yeah, her
north and
testimony
south
was-
and east
was
and
dead
west
on.
of your block?
Yes.
And there's a few shorter blocks on the east-west, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, with 40 years in the neighborhood, are there any street-facing accessory dwellings whose front facades are as close to the street as the principal?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
But you are aware of accessory dwellings in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I have. I never heard those initials until these folks wanted to destroy the neighborhood. I'm sorry. Change the neighborhood, and I heard the initials. Yes, I've seen people build them. I've seen some of the folks here build additions.
You're aware
on
of coach houses?
it. Yeah,
right?
they're in the back of the houses. Yes, sir.
And are there any near you?
Yeah,
Okay. And
couple.
the same as Donna testified to?
Absolutely. In fact, if you walk down the street, you would never, and you pass those people's houses, a couple of them are here tonight, you'd never even know there was something built on there in the back.
And do you have any objection to coach houses or accessory
No,
dwellings?
not at all.
In general? And would your testimony with regard to your neighbor Nancy Brueggemann be the same as that of Donna? And
A very nice, lovely, honorable, intelligent woman. I'm sorry she moved out, and I'm really sorry that her daughter, who I also know, has had some terrible illness. She's a wonderful woman and a very smart woman.
when you bought the house at 1519 Judson, was there even a door on the north end of 1525?
No. And no, not at all. And I don't know when that appeared or how it appeared, but no. And it's there. I've never seen anybody go in and out of it.
Have you reviewed the plans for the coach house garage proposed to be built at 1525?
Yes, I have, and my comments are a little. First of all, it's a historic preservation neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I'm not trying to knock any other neighborhoods that are in Evanston, but this particular plan is, in my opinion, is too large. Doesn't fit in this beautiful neighborhood. I think it's illegal, what they want to do, very much so. It's certainly wrong. It's unlike anything else in the neighborhood, or for that matter, in the city that I've seen ever. Unbelievable they've applied for this, and ugly. Sorry. That's how I feel, and I feel it's extremely honest.
Okay. In what ways specifically would you be harmed if it was built?
I think what my wife Donna alluded to or stated, it would shut down a lot. Pardon me. and the photographs, which she's done such a magnificent job. It would cut down a lot of our beautiful light, which I showed you one day, looking out the windows and seeing all of that. It would just do it would be horribly ugly. It would ruin the whole street from the perspective of looking at it. People go, huh? That shouldn't be here.
And do you have familiarity with real estate values generally in the neighborhood based on your 40 years there and
Yeah,
the types
but,
of factors I discussed with your wife?
I think I think Donna hit it on the head. I don't follow it all that much because it's not like, that I own that and I'm going to, wow, I bought it for this and I'm going to sell it for, no, so I don't really know. I know that you probably can't buy a house like, say, Tom Breen or Mike Myers for $200,000. Yeah, I got an idea.
And based on your general knowledge of real estate values in the area, do you have any opinion as to what the financial effect would be on the value of your house should this structure be built?
Jeff, I don't know that, but it's horrendous. Would it be $100,000, $200,000? I really don't know. If what I've seen of their plans, and I was going to buy my blue house, I wouldn't buy it. I'd look for another house. That is, if their plan went through and that thing was built.
Okay. Are there any other harms that I haven't touched on or that Donna didn't touch on that you want to add? Understanding that real estate is personal and your home is
Sure.
personal. But.
I think Donna did a terrific job. I think you have done a terrific job. Our neighbors who have supported us in the same belief have done a terrific job. And yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say.
Then I have no further questions for you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Breen?
If I could just do a statement, or do you want to do questions and answers?
Well,
However-
I'll try and keep this quick for the commission. Could you state your name and address for them here?
Sure.
If you stand over here, then I can use this microphone.
My name is Tom Breen, and my wife Janine and I own 1515 Judson Avenue, which sits behind a brick wall that is called a spite wall. I did not build it. It was built years and years and years ago.
And how long have you lived in the neighborhood, Mr. Breen?
20-some years.
And have you had opportunity to walk, bike around, see other parts of the neighborhood?
I'm very familiar, dog walking, I used to bike and things like that.
Is there, would you generally agree with what Mr. and Mrs. Harrison described to be the general alignment and layout of houses in the neighborhood, i.e. street facing? And
Yes, absolutely.
And is there anything you want to add to that I didn't go over with them?
The only houses, the only coach house-like structures I've ever seen, to the best of my knowledge, have been on the alley and are unseen when looking at the front of the house. I would like to add, however, that it's almost like we're dealing in alternative facts. If somebody is claiming that that garage is in the backyard of that house, that is not true. That garage that they want to remodel is on the side of the house. The front door, and I used to make deliveries to Nancy and Megan because of the medication sometimes would be delivered to my house because they weren't home. The front door was the front door. You can't call a side door a front door. The front door is on Judson. The garage is in the side lot. I don't understand how anybody could stand before anybody and say it's the backyard. It's a lie. It's just not true. I have no problems, if you don't mind me saying, ladies and gentlemen, I have no problems with these neighbors. They seem very nice. I know that one of the gentlemen is very active in the school board, and I've heard great things about him. I watched them look at the house 3 or 4 years ago with their parents, or I don't know who was buying the house. I don't really even know who owns the house right now. But I saw them look at the house multiple times, and Nancy and Megan would tell me about it. If their idea was, when they were buying the house, that they were going to call the side lot a backyard, I don't know how they got that impression and how they could pass that test. I want to like them. I want to get along with them. They look like they have a beautiful family and a very nice house with a garage in the side lot.
And is this your signature on a letter dated August 27, 24?
Yes, it
We
is.
supplied to the commission, and you received a copy of that? Okay, I'd ask that the letter be received into evidence. And,
Could I just say one more thing? At age 77, I never thought I'd look like the old man yelling at the kids playing in the front yard. I swear to you, that is not my intention. I had a whole bunch of relative kids in the front yard. But I do completely support my neighbors, the Harrisons, because I think they're actually right on point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Breen. With that, I have no further witnesses. If I could just sum up what we've submitted to the, oh, yeah, you may have.
Let me go ahead and allow Ms. Klotz to respond, but first, before I do that, are there any questions from commissioners in regard to the presentation from Mr. Smith? Okay. If you can go ahead and have a seat, and I'll ask Ms. Klotz to come up to the microphone, please.
You want to use that one?
Okay, just because I want to be able to refer to my computer, I'm sorry.
That's fine. And for the record, again, Ms. Klotz, your role with the City of Evanston?
Zoning administrator.
Thank you. And if you would please tell us about how you determined the front yard and side yard of this particular property.
Sure. First, at a glance into all zoning staff, including the initial zoning staff who did the review, it from a zoning perspective appears as a typical corner property where it has a typical front yard and a typical street side yard. Given that all zoning staff were in agreement on what the yards were and did not anticipate that there would be an appeal of the yards, it looks like a fairly straightforward situation and determination for us. That is largely based on the existing structures and the layout of the existing lot. The zoning ordinance provides guidance on how to determine the yards, and those are the most outstanding and simplest to see guiding factors, specifically that the front yard is typically the shorter lot line, which in this case would confirm that Davis is the front yard, and that when you look at all yards together and the existing structure together, the most compliance is achieved with zoning when you consider Davis to be the front yard. Specifically, that brings a compliant front yard and rear yard, interior side yard, and street side yard. So given all of that and the existing garage location, it seems fairly clear to zoning staff that the original determination made was the correct determination for Davis to be the front yard.
And with this determination, is there anything that would require a variance for a structure as proposed to be built?
As presented in the zoning analysis, no. Of existing things, there is one thing I do want to clarify. In the staff memo, I noted that there is a fence that is in the Davis yard, which that specific item is, based on historic documents, is more compliant to consider that the street side yard, since there was no variation documents anywhere. However, looking more closely at that, it doesn't comply with either yard, because it also does not make the street side yard setback if you do flip the yards. So given that, the fence does not comply either way, and everything complies with Davis as the front yard.
But in particular, with this particular property, with the proposed ADU garage rebuild, would it trigger any other variations with the determination that you made on front and side yards?
No, it is compliant.
Okay. Are you aware of any other properties in the city of Evanston in which there may or may not even be a door on something that maybe somebody would consider a front yard, or that the zoning administrator using the determination records would determine to be a front yard?
Offhand, my old property that I used to live at was exactly that situation. There was no front door to the 27-foot front yard, which was also the address of the property.
Okay. Other question, Commissioner Halleck?
I just wanted to make a comment on that. There are, I forget the type of home that typically has a side entrance. It's a, gosh, I wish I could remember it, but it's a very distinguished style of house that is not built with entrances off the front yard. It's off the side yard. So it's common.
All right.
I was just also going to note, we just had a case a few months ago on Simpson, where the front yard was on the side street and the main entrance was at the corner.
We see it fairly often when we are doing zoning reviews, and it honestly does trip up property owners quite a bit when we provide the results saying, this is your front yard, this is not, because it is not the same thing as what your address is or just where your front door is. The zoning ordinance is pretty clear, giving a variety of a list of things that lead to the conclusion.
And the project that's been presented to you as part of the determination of yards, has that gone through any sort of process other than zoning analysis and your determination?
It did proceed to the Preservation Commission, and it has received its certificate of appropriateness.
So the Preservation Commission has agreed that this structure is compliant and preservation-wise?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions from commissioners? Not seeing any. I don't know if there's anybody from the general public who wanted to make a comment. I had some people sign up, so I'm just going to go through these names. And I apologize if I mispronounce a name because I'm not able to read someone's writing or such. The first one is Jean Smiling Coyote. Is that you? All right, if you'd please come up and state for the record your name and address.
My name is Jean Smiling Coyote. My address is 1823 West Granville in Chicago, but I'm in Evanston a lot. I oppose the modification of the garage of 1525 Judson to have an ADU on its second floor. One, this isn't a neighborly use of the airspace next to 1519 Judson. Two, it's not considerate to put the eldest people in a household on an upper floor without an elevator. Older people are more likely to become disabled or just get tired of climbing stairs. Attorney Jeffrey P. Smith told the Evanston Roundtable, June 26, 2024, it would be preferable if the ADU for Omar Salem's parents were, quote, added to the principal structure instead, unquote. There's a one-story room on the south side of the house. I propose a second floor be added to this, keeping the footprint the same and integrating the exterior smoothly with the existing two-story section. The ADU for the parents would be built on the ground floor. The second floor would take one or more rooms from the house, as it is now. As a longtime viewer of this old house, I know the playbook for such a project. I have the talent and experience to help create preliminary floor plans for both floors in cooperation with the owners and architects.
All right, thank you. You've just handed me a copy of your statement, so I'll put that for the record. The next person I have signed up is Alice Egley.
I'm Alice Egley. I live at 324 Davis. And so our property adjoins the one at 1525 Judson. And I'm speaking about the tree, but not about the preservation of the tree, about the preservation of our house. If the tree is damaged, as it would be by the ADU. So right on the border, at the fence, there is a Douglas fir, which I expect was planted when these houses were built in the early 1940s. It is now about 80 feet tall. It is a gigantic tree, but it's young, because Douglas firs live to 400 or 500 years. So it is now one of the taller trees in Evanston. But it's not about just the preservation of the tree. The ADU would come within 3 feet of the trunk, and the roots go out at least 12 feet. So in the plan, there is some preservation for not cutting the roots, but not cutting the roots, some would have to be cut, right? But it's not just the cutting, it's the fact the roots would be under this concrete ADU. Would they do the tree any good under 9 feet of the roots of my tree under the ADU? No. So what would happen to the tree? Well, it would weaken on their side where the ADU is. And in a storm like last night, it's likely to fall on our house. So I have looked into getting the tree removed. It would be really sad. This young, beautiful Douglas fir that's only about, it's not even 100 years old yet. I can pay $5,000 and have it cut down. But that would what eventually would have to happen, because it would fall right over like that, potentially right on top of our two-story house, bedrooms in the top floor, death to the people in the bedrooms. So it is creating a dangerous situation with respect to a Douglas fir that's right on the border, a very large Douglas fir. So it's not tree preservation, it's our preservation of our house and ourselves, because this tree would become dangerous. Thank you.
Next up, I have Mike Myers.
Hello. I'm Mike Myers. I live at 1518 Judson, directly across from the Harrisons. We moved into our home 20 years ago, and we did it because it was beautiful. It was in a historic district, and we loved the little block. There was only 6 houses on this little block, each one different, each one unique, each one architecturally interesting, and far enough apart from each other to make a really beautiful, open, airy neighborhood. So, as Donna said, when I saw the rotted window upstairs in our house, I said, I need to fix that. And so we went through the process of swapping out that old window for a new window. It took months and months. It took a lot of work. It was frustrating, but I understood that the neighborhood was being protected. The neighborhood was being preserved. Just with my little window, they were respecting the historical nature of our neighborhood. So today, I appreciate that. Now, someone with the smallest lot on the street is going to build a second new structure in our historic district. And I don't understand why I have to go through so much to put in a new window, and they're allowed to put in a 2-story new structure way too close to the neighbor's house, which will affect the entire block. So I think it's not a great idea. I agree that it could be added to the house and create a beautiful side yard that would open up space for them, open up space for Mitch and Donna. If this is their side yard, why did they put a handicap ramp on the front of the house, on Judson, where they go into the front door? I don't understand how all of a sudden that's now the side of the house. And the garage, which is also in the front of the house, has a driveway right off of Judson, going to the front of the garage, which is the front of the house. So I disagree, even though I know the zoning people know best, that the front of the house, at least to all of us, has always been where that mermaid sculpture is, where that garage is, where that ramp is. So, in closing, I would suggest that they look at a plan that brings the addition to the existing house and would look better and would take up less space and would respect the neighborhood, the historical beauty of the neighborhood. Also, I do worry that this separate unit someday could become a short or long-term rental. And I don't know what the laws are about that in our area, but I'm not interested or excited about having a VRBO across the street from me. And I'm afraid that this is what could happen to it. And if it does happen, I would like them to write some kind of agreement that that will never happen, because it just shouldn't be a part of our block. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. The last person I have signed up. Real quickly, please.
I did a bit of research on Douglas firs. And in the city of Seattle, which has a lot of them, they have a law, and that is that no structure can be built within 12 feet of a Douglas fir. End.
Thank you. Real quickly, please.
Real quickly, I referred to calling.
If you could speak into the microphone.
I referred to calling the garage, the backyard, as a lie. I shouldn't have said that because I did not know the definition that the zoning people had come up with. In my experience, and my impression is that is a side yard. I don't know technically what it is.
All right, thank you. Robert Egley?
Well, I arrived in Evanston in 1994, in order to start work on rehabbing our house at 324 Davis Street. Ever since, ever since my arrival that many years ago, I have gone over to the neighbors at 1525 Judson, to their front door with the number 1525 Judson over it. And for all of the owners there have been greeted with a hello, and most recently, the same hello by the current owner, who at 11 o'clock one morning arrived to the front door in his in his nightgown. In any case, that is the impression that is left by the residents at 1525 Judson, that indeed the front door was on Judson. Perhaps they should have been corrected by the city's agency who has the correct type of information on that point.
Those are all the people I had signed up to speak. I see one person raising their hand in the back. And if you could please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Hi, my name is Omar Salem. I am one of the owners of 1525 Judson in Evanston. I currently live at 2005 Maple in Evanston. Sorry I didn't sign up. I was a little late. It's my parents' 42nd wedding anniversary, and we were out together at a restaurant. And they co-own the house with me and my wife. I'm frustrated because we have followed every single rule, every law, we've done our due diligence. Melissa has been helpful since we were looking at the house in 2020. I've talked to 4 different architects. We chose Tony, but every single one has done a zoning analysis for us and told us the same thing. As I told the Preservation Commission, we are going to do this whole project with dignity. Tony designed a beautiful house that fits in, that follows the parameters of the Preservation Commission. And my neighbors are throwing everything they can at us so that we don't do this project. Okay? We are going to treat the trees with dignity, but they're not more important than my kids. I know how long my neighbors have lived here. They're not more important than my kids who are going to live here for 60 plus years. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, by the way, who would have been here too if not for the anniversary. But that's my point is we've done everything right. Melissa has been very clear to us and other people at the Zoning Commission, we've done everything right. I don't know what else I can say. I know what your purview is. I think we've done what we're supposed to do. And I mean, I'm happy to answer questions if you have questions about the house itself, but I also know we're not here to talk about the Preservation Commission or the design, despite everyone's thoughts. We are here to talk about the zoning. So I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. If not, I'll sit down.
I don't think there are any questions from commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Smith, now I will return to you and give you a chance to say anything you'd like to say in summation before we close the record.
Sure, and thank you. And I appreciate that this is a public meeting, and I appreciate the commission giving latitude to citizens to speak their mind, even if it's not necessarily the strictest of evidence. But that's what we have to do in this city and this country. Amen. One preliminary point I'd like to correct, and I don't know how without saying go back and look at the Preservation Commission hearing. The Preservation Commission would have voted against this, except a couple of the commissioners said they felt they had no choice given the determination of the zoning staff, purely on a preservation ground. And I don't want to inject my own particular opinion into this. Several of the commissioners, including some who voted for it, felt that it was an inappropriate project aesthetically, but that if it met the zoning criteria, they weren't allowed to override that. And so the zoning determination has had a significant impact on the previous proceeding as well. prefer not to cross-examine Ms. Klotz, but I would take issue with a couple of things that are in the staff report. First, there's references to the prior zoning determinations, quote unquote. If you look through the packet, there's only one certificate of zoning compliance and only one formal zoning analysis that exists in the entire 285 pages with which you were supplied, and that's what was done in 2001. Now, granted, when somebody's buying a house, their due diligence may or may not extend to going and pulling the file on what was there before, but the fact of the matter is, for a quarter century, the zoning determination by the city of Evanston was that the Davis Street side was a side yard. The Judson Street side was a front yard. That's how Nancy Brueggemann got to build the fence. She wouldn't have been able to put on a patio and a front-facing fence on Davis Street without that. And the city's determination walks through all the factors, walks through all the setbacks. The only reason for setting back the fence instead of having it go all the way to the Judson facade is that the Judson facade is treated as the front yard, and it's stated as the front yard in that analysis. So Ms. Klotz does a good archaeological job of supplying speculation where we don't have a clear record, but that's all it is. We don't know what the prior determinations were, if there were any formal determinations before 2001 by anybody as to other things that were done with regard to this property. There's a lot of things that get done in Evanston that don't have a formal determination. Sometimes it's because people don't know the rules. Sometimes it's because the rules change. I can't stand here and tell you that I know exactly what the zoning code was in 1974 or 1959 with regard to the setbacks. There's been hundreds, if not thousands, of changes in our zoning code since then. But we have one clear, very clear piece of evidence here, and it's the city's own statement that the Judson side was the front side. And you can't have sides flipping around every time a piece of property changes hands, or you don't have certainty, not only for the buyers, but for their neighbors as well, who may have made plans and changes in landscaping of their own based on the conditions that they rightfully thought would continue in perhaps not in perpetuity, but not without some change in the law. So, yes, there are plenty of lots in Evanston, and perhaps the term you were searching for was side entry colonial or side entry Dutch colonial, a dying breed. You see very few built anymore, and we have a few. I've personally knocked on thousands of doors in Evanston, so I'm very aware of where most front doors are and how many side doors there are. And that's yet one more reason why this is not a, quote, test case. This is a relatively unusual situation. Only so many lots are corners. Only so many lots have configurations where you don't have the long side as or the fanciest side is, the front facing. Here we do have an alignment of the actual address for the property with the street that it faces. What's a little unusual is having a side property that doesn't have an alley on any side. And that's where I think it comes into play, the statement of Mr. Herdig in the application that the spirit and intent of the ADU ordinance requires granting this. The phrase Mayor Biss has used is "yes in my backyard." The manual and the guidelines that the City of Evanston publishes for ADUs all show these structures in backyards unless they're being attached directly to the house. I'm not aware of anything in any city publication or when folks were debating the ADU ordinance that said we're going to have ADUs street-facing, even with the facade of what is the principal entry to the house. So you could make a technical argument that it's the rear yard, but the only city determination that's gone through the formal process prior to this one had a different determination, that it was in a side yard. When Mr. Hertig submitted the application, we put that in our exhibits, the box they checked for location, there was one for side, one for rear, and they checked side. And so, and then you've got the prior owner who said, that was my front yard, that was my front door. The real estate listing refers to the entry hall and then refers to a little side door that's been added that goes to a patio. And front doors into the front yard don't go through the kitchen and then terminate in a little fenced patio. Everything about this house says the front side is on Judson, the front door is on Judson, and you've got what we would now call a non-conforming garage to the side. So a big part of what's important when we make governmental decisions is considering trust in government, which is imperiled throughout America right now for a lot of different reasons. And trust in government is strengthened when, if something looks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you call it a duck. If government instead says, well, we're going to make an exception and call it a quacking goose or some other species in order to accommodate somebody, that's when trust is threatened. So I think it's important to be consistent, and that's what ought to be done here. As Ms. Klotz notes in the staff memo, denial, granting this appeal in favor of the Harrisons, finding that the determination was incorrect and that in fact the side yard is where the structure is proposed to be built, would not prevent it being built. The owners would simply have to come back and apply for a variation. I disagree that it's a minor variation. I think if you look at the definition of minor and major variations, changing a yard or a location variation is a major variation, but that doesn't prevent it being built, especially if no one objects to it. There are non-conforming things all over Evanston, and some of them not 100 years old, but that have been done recently where somebody wanted to do something and they said, okay, that's fine. It's not going to harm me. It would be different if the same amount of mass was being added to the existing house at 1525, and therefore allowing for the space and light that's a main function and the main purpose of the zoning ordinance to continue to exist for the Harrisons. The appearance of 1525 has changed over the years. It was originally looked like almost like a 1950s split level, and had the lateral frame board on top and brick below, and now it's all stucco. So you could add to that. Stucco makes it easy to paper over. You don't even know that an addition has been added, and it could be separate entry or it could be internal entry. But I think I can stipulate that my clients would not object to and wouldn't to an ADU that was an attached ADU, even though it were in the side yard at that. So this is not about stopping ADUs. It's not about stopping families from living together. It's simply about preventing the type of encroachment when you've got this very unique situation of an accessory structure that has no alley separation from a house. I think it was an oversight in the drafting of the ADU ordinance, and granting the appeal in my client's favor would actually help to clarify that and avoid future disputes and controversies like this throughout Evanston, and clarity is good for everybody. And And I think it would be it would be all very consistent with the spirit and intent of the ADU ordinance and our desire to find new ways where we can of housing people in Evanston. So I'm not going to go through the 13 different ways that we've laid out in our appeal in which we think the proper decision is to find that this is the side yard. I'll leave it with the duck analogy. Common sense here should prevail. It's supported by the box that was checked by the applicant. It's supported by the previous city record. It's supported by the testimony and the experience of the previous owner and by the folks who've been in that house over the last couple decades. So I think the standard when one of these cases goes up to a circuit court is manifest weight of the evidence. The manifest weight of the evidence is in favor of granting the appeal in my client's favor and finding that the determination of the zoning administrator was incorrect in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. With that, I will close the public testimony on this particular. Very, very quickly and on topic, please.
You know, living next door for 40 years, I sort of forgot till I was up here. The sign that has the address of the front of the house says 1525. All 40 years I've been there. It's kind of funny in the last 3 or 4 months since we've been dealing with this, that sign disappeared. Thank you.
Thank you. Public testimony is now closed. There will be no further comment from the public. We will begin our deliberation. This is an appeal. When we hear an appeal, we hear it de novo. We are not bound by any of the previous decisions by the zoning administrator in this particular case, and can hear the testimony that we want to hear.
May I interrupt? Brian George, Assistant City Attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
So as far as the appeal goes, if you look at Title 6, Chapter 3, Section 11, the appeal procedure is provided as a safeguard against arbitrary, ill-considered, or erroneous administrative decisions. It's not meant to subvert the clear purposes or intent of the ordinance and the authority of the zoning administrator, and most importantly, the reviewing body, you guys, should give all proper deference to the spirit and intent embodied and the reasonable interpretations of the language charged with administration of the ordinance. So I do believe that says that deference should be given to the zoning administrator's determination.
That always is one of our considerations whenever we hear appeals. But I do want to bring us back to the issue at hand, which is really the determination of what is the front yard of this particular property. We've heard some testimony on other issues, some of which fall under our purview, but were not part of the appeal, and some of which do not fall under our purview whatsoever. So I just kind of want to ask commissioners their general feelings. It is odd because we really don't have a set of standards to go against on this particular case, because it's not a variation that is being appealed. It's not a minor variation. It's not a major variation that has somehow come back to us on appeal, anything like that. So there aren't really standards to it. It's kind of what we feel is the correct interpretation of the law, and whether or not the zoning administrator erred in making that determination. Commissioner Halleck.
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick. First of all, I wanted to apologize to the owners of 1525 because you started this process on April 10th. And man, if I had to go through, how many months has it been, I would be very frustrated. Second point, normally I do my very best to try to understand the position of the staff. And I think most of the time I have agreed with the staff. But everybody makes mistakes, and I think this is the case. This is the case here. I think Mr. Smith took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And I for the life of me, and I've considered all of the staff comments about why the front door should be on Davis, but it isn't. The front door is on Justin, and if that's what we're making a decision on, I'm in favor of the appeal.
I agree with the zoning administrator's determination with respect to the front yard being on Davis. And really, I think that what swayed me is the fact that if the determination is made is that the front yard would be on Judson, then all buildings on that property would be non-conforming because of the need to have a 27-foot front yard, a 30-foot rear yard, and the lot is 63 feet wide. So I think that one of the things we should be looking at is not creating situations where there are more nonconformities than necessary. So that's, and I also, I spent a fair amount of time walking around that neighborhood as well. And with respect to the fence that is now according to the zoning administrator's determination in the front yard, on that block of Davis, there are at least 2 and maybe 3 other front yard fences that are clearly in the front yard. So I think that in terms of kind of the character of the built environment in that block, the presence of the fence is not necessarily out of character with the existing conditions. So I support the zoning administrator's interpretation.
I also wholesale support the zoning administrator's interpretation. I think this is a really clear case. I think that the appellant is not on a crusade to make sure that front yard determinations are correct in the city. I think it's really clear that they're just against the ADU. And this is simply the one way they're trying to stop it. The packet lays out many, many arguments for how proper consideration and the guidance in our ordinance have been followed, have unanimous considerations amongst all of the zoning staff, all came to one conclusion, and this seems like a very erroneous objection. I think that if we were to uphold this appeal and the owner of 1525 had to request a variation to have the project go forward, then the same people would be here fighting the ADU. Because it's not about these yard determinations, it's about their resistance to the ADU, which has been completely validated by all of the checks in the ordinance, by the Preservation Commission, and all of the due diligence of the zoning administrator and their staff. So I feel really frustrated that we're even here, like having to listen to this case. And I do not support the appeal.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
I support the interpretation of the zoning administrator vis-a-vis the yards. I went over to the site just to take another look today, and the function of this house, yes, it definitely appears to be oriented towards Judson, but that's not the guidance that we receive or that the zoning administrator and city staff receive to determine on how yards shall be oriented. And the purely technocratic interpretation in my mind is basically spot on. Irregardless of front yard activity occurring on Judson, that's not the rules by which we are put put forth to employ. So in short, I agree with the interpretation that that the zoning administrator and her rationale have detailed.
Thank you. Ms. Mangum?
Based on the testimony of the witnesses and also review of the photographs and I guess the map, I would say I think we should grant the appeal.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Linwald?
Yeah, I just would like to say, and again, this is not in our purview, but I think that the existence, there will need to be some sort of consideration at some point with respect to the tree compatibility with the tree ordinance and the zoning rules as the zoning process moves forward. But I think with respect to the appeal, that's my.
All right, thank you.
Can I say something else?
Yeah.
It seems to me that in the past, when we've looked at corner sites, and not necessarily in R1 districts, but in other districts, it was where does the builder, where does the applicant want the address to be? And that is designating the front yard. And I'm saying this again, not for R1 necessarily districts, but in other commercial districts. And so I put a lot of emphasis on that and the fact that for the life of this house, the address has been on Judson. And to me, that is why that should be a huge consideration in where the front door is, because that's exactly where it is.
All right, thank you. A couple just general thoughts. First off, one of the things that we look at is the front door. What is determination of the front door is not necessarily determination of front yard. So there is some that needs to be separated out a little bit. And I'm thinking in particular, I was doing something down in my neighborhood in the 8th Ward, and I couldn't find a house. And it was because the house was labeled as 1201 Dobson. There is no entrance whatsoever on 1201 Dobson. They actually face on Barton. And the address above the street, or above the door on Barton, is 1201. But the front yard was that didn't have an entrance because that conformed most like the neighboring properties. And so when I'm looking at this, there's many different things. We don't have the determination of having an alley, which makes it real easy to do because alleys are on rear yards. On a corner lot, we always have an issue. Because there's a different set of rules for street side yards than there are for interior side yards. So with the Harrison's home, the side yards have a certain setback, certain requirements that are part of the zoning ordinance. And I don't know whether they conform or not. I'm assuming they probably are pretty close to that. On a street side yard, it's a greater setback than it is required on an interior side yard. In looking at kind of using the analogy that's been adopted, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. If there is a house that has the conforming yards, then those are the yards. A garage is in a backyard typically. We see this garage existing in what the zoning administrator has determined to be the backyard. And I do believe that the zoning administrator's interpretation is correct. We tasked the zoning administrator with making these determinations, not the homeowners. So a homeowner can check whatever box they want, but when the determination is made by the zoning administrator, that is the interpretation that we use in granting whatever variations our relief are sought. In this particular case, there is no relief being sought from us. It's really an appeal as to the determination of which yard is which yard. And so in my in my opinion, the zoning administrator made the correct determination, and Judson is the side yard and Davis is the front yard, and the garage is in the rear yard. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have standards really to go through, so I don't have the benefit of usually I go through the standards at this point. I do not have that, but I will ask if there is a motion on this particular case, and Commissioner Lindwall, would you like to?
Sure. I move that the Land Use Commission affirm the decision of the zoning administrator that Davis Street is the front yard with respect to this property, and deny the applicant's appeal.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lindwall. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, to support the appellant's appeal, not the.
No, my motion was to support the zoning administrator's determination and deny the appellant's appeal.
Correct.
So a yes vote in this case is supporting the zoning administrator's determination. A no vote is in support of the appeal. Is that clear to everyone? All right. With that then, Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Halleck?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lindwall?
Yes?
Commissioner Mangum?
No.
Commissioner Pucktell?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. With 4 votes in favor and 2 against, since we are the determining body in this particular matter, we find ourselves in the same situation we were in the case last week. I need to have 5 concurrent votes to affirm the decision of the zoning administrator in this particular case. So this case will be continued till our meeting on the 11th, at which point Commissioner Aravalo, Mabadi, or Miranchev will be able to vote on this particular case at that particular time. So therefore, we don't have a direct resolution this evening, but hopefully we'll have one on September 11th. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. The next thing that we have on our agenda is communication. Is there anything from staff?
Yes, we have a new senior planner who has been sitting next to Ms. Klatz this evening, Sam Hubbard. He is on his 3rd day, so we are really throwing him in and getting him involved in things. So,
welcome, Mr. Hubbard. And we look forward to working with you over the years. Quickly, one other communication. I met with Liz Williams and Sarah Flax to begin planning. As you may have heard, we have this thing called a comp plan and a zoning ordinance and a map amendment that will all be coming down. And so hopefully I will have at our next meeting a little bit better timing as to when we can expect things, but it is anticipated that November and December will be our crunch time for reviewing those documents as they move through. They will, to my understanding, be made available earlier because they will be part of, there will be public town halls. Some other commissions and boards have to review the documentation as well and make recommendations to us. So it'll come out a little earlier for them so they can they can do their things before it actually finally comes to us. So I cannot stress enough that we have meetings scheduled in November and December. I know those are not the great times of the year. Normally we do not meet, but once a month during those times. But when we adopted our schedule for this year, anticipating the comp plan and the zoning ordinance, we scheduled in our additional meeting in November and an additional meeting in December. So those are on our schedule, so please do try to attend those. And like I said, next time, hopefully I'll have a better idea as to how we will move those through this commission and what we will be doing with those.
I'd like to just report that I did attend all of the the 2 days of focus group meetings, and then there was a development scenario workshop last Saturday. And I hope that the consultants got good feedback.
All right. With that, we have a section now for public comment. This is for anyone who wishes to address the commission on any issues. I don't see anybody who's looking to address us, so I will ask if there is a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned until our meeting on September 11th in council chambers. And thank you, everyone.